Hello everybody and welcome back to another video. Whenever a Windows version reaches its end of support, I like to do a retrospective video where we take a look back at the operating system over the years. So far I've done this with Windows XP in 2014, Windows Vista in 2017, and most recently Windows Embedded POS Ready 2009 in 2019. But today is January 14th, 2020. A date that marks another end of support deadline for a Windows release. And this time around, it's Windows 7. So in today's video, we're going to be taking one last look at this decade-old operating system. I'll be discussing its origins, development history, and how it ultimately came to be the most used Windows release worldwide for over 6 years. Believe it or not, the idea for what would eventually become Windows 7 was conceived way back in the year 2000. At this time, Microsoft was developing a roadmap intended to outline their plans for the next 3 releases of the Windows operating system. At the time, these 3 releases were referred to by their code names: Whistler, Longhorn, and Blackcomb. Whistler and Blackcomb were intended to be the next 2 major releases of Windows, with Longhorn being a minor release in between the two, originally planned to debut sometime around 2003. Whistler was released in 2001 as Windows XP. Now, for us to understand the development history of Windows 7, we have to talk a little bit about Windows Vista's development history, and I'll kind of explain why. Now, the development process for Longhorn, which would eventually become Vista, has probably the most complex history of any Windows release. Because it was intended to be a minor release, Microsoft wanted to implement most of the advanced technologies and new features it was developing into Blackcomb, since that was going to be the next major release of the OS. But that didn't go exactly as planned. Numerous new technologies found their way into Longhorn, which ultimately caused the release date to be delayed multiple times. This was one of the reasons that Microsoft actually reset Longhorn's development in 2004 to start with a clean slate, this time using the Windows Server 2003 codebase as its foundation. The company also put a much higher priority on developing updates and service packs for Windows XP, due to a few major virus outbreaks around that time. Eventually, this new version of Longhorn came to be known as Windows Vista when it was released in 2006. But it's fair to say that Vista was not the same product that Microsoft started developing in the early 2000s. As I'm sure we all know, Vista was met with wide criticism when it launched. Even though it had such a long development cycle, the OS still suffered from performance and compatibility issues at launch. This resulted in many skeptical computer users to make the decision just to stick with XP. In fact, OEM computer manufacturers chose to do this as well, with some still offering Windows XP pre-installed on new computers, even though Windows Vista was the latest release at that time. It was later announced that the next release of Windows would be codenamed Windows 7. Set to be released in 2009, this new OS had a goal of improving a lot of the performance issues that Vista suffered from. Like Vista and Longhorn, this new OS was distinct from Blackcomb. It was an entirely new project. However, the concept of these 3 Windows releases, XP, Vista, and 7, was conceived in the roadmap that Microsoft created in the year 2000. Ultimately, Windows 7 just kept its codename as the official release name when it debuted in 2009. As for its launch, Windows 7 was met with way more positive reviews than Windows Vista. According to the BBC, in an article posted on July 15, 2009, pre-orders for Windows 7 on Amazon's UK store outsold all copies of Vista sold in its 17-week pre-order period in just 8 hours. When it was eventually released, market share for the OS grew rapidly over time. According to StatCounter, when Windows 7 was released to general availability in October 2009, Windows Vista held about 25% of Windows version market share worldwide. In contrast, XP, which was 8 years old at this point, still dominated the Windows computer space with a market share of around 70%. It took less than 1 year for Windows 7 to hold more market share than Vista, but XP remained on top for a little while longer. It wasn't until October of 2011 when Windows 7 finally surpassed XP, holding almost half of all Windows computer market share worldwide. It remained the #1 most used Windows version even after Windows 8, Windows 8.1, and even Windows 10 were released. Despite the fact that Windows 10 was initially offered as a completely free upgrade for all 7, 8, and 8.1 users, it did not surpass Windows 7 in market share until February 2018, almost 3 years after its initial release. This was mostly due to the numerous concerns people had about Windows 10. With its telemetry, automatic updates, and privacy concerns, there were a lot of Windows users that just simply stuck with Windows 7 despite Microsoft's numerous efforts to get people to upgrade, even going as far as to block updates to all computers running Windows 7 on the latest generation of Intel and AMD processors, although users were quick to find workarounds to this problem. But today is finally the day that Microsoft stops supporting Windows 7. This means that if you're still running Windows 7 on your computer, you will no longer get security updates and patches through Windows Update. Now, it's worth noting that Microsoft has actually created an extended security update program for Windows 7, where users of 7 Professional and Enterprise can opt to pay Microsoft directly for up to 3 more years of support. But unfortunately for consumers, these updates are only available for businesses who are still in the process of upgrading their systems. And even if this was available to you, if you opted to get all 3 years of support, it's going to cost you more than a Windows 10 license in the long run. So obviously, Microsoft recommends for those people still running Windows 7 to just go about updating to Windows 10. But ultimately, it's up to you. Windows 7 right now still holds over 25% of Windows computer market share, and it's likely that a percentage of those users just won't update. But if you decide to stay on Windows 7, just be prepared, because some popular software developers will eventually follow in Microsoft's footsteps and drop Windows 7 support for their applications, some sooner than later. We've seen this happen before when both XP and Vista lost support from Microsoft. Basically, you're not going to be able to rely on Microsoft anymore to keep your system secure. And hey, do you want to know something else that you can't really rely on to keep yourself secure? Using the same password on all of your online accounts. And if that's something that you're doing, you might be interested in checking out this video's sponsor, Dashlane. Dashlane is the secure password manager and digital wallet designed to make your online life a little easier while also keeping you secure. Have you ever forgotten your password on a website and had to go through the password recovery process? I'm sure that all of us have at some point struggled with managing our passwords, especially if you have a lot of online accounts. Instead of coming up with unique passwords yourself, Dashlane can do it for you. It keeps all of your passwords stored in a secure vault that only you have access to with a single master password. It can also auto-generate secure passwords for you right from your web browser, and auto-fill in form data like addresses and credit card numbers. This allows you to breeze through sign-up forms and log into all of your accounts with just one click. You can download Dashlane for free on Windows, macOS, Linux, Android, and iOS. But today, Dashlane is offering you guys a free 30-day trial of their premium plan if you click the link in this video's description. The best part? There's no credit card required at sign-up. So that, my friends, is the story of Windows 7, the operating system that was released to wide appeal in 2009 and ultimately dominated the Windows computer space for years. That's all for today's video. I'd like to thank you all very much for watching. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to give it a like and get subscribed. And as always, I will see you in the next video.